right, 99.9 Punk World Radio FM. You guys already know what time it is. And right here, we are joined by a legendary punk rock legend. That's right. We got Kevin of the Dropkick Murphys right here, live on the line, and of course on the radio station airwaves as well. Kevin, how you doing tonight out there in Massachusetts?
I'm doing great, DJ Immortal. How are you, man?
Oh man, best I can possibly be. Just enjoying the last little bit of the weekend. It sucks that it's Sunday. I absolutely cannot stand Mondays, but Friday will be here as soon as possible. So
there you go. There you go.
I got to admit, I think I'm not less looking forward to Christmas rather than I am with Monday. But I'm trying to take it one day at a time and forget that Christmas is coming up.
Well, you know, it's hard to ignore Christmas right now, but one day at a time is the way to go, man.
I will admit, so far I've went all Christmas season without hearing Mariah Carey "All I Want for Christmas." I will say I'm probably going to jinx myself because there's a few days left. But so far,
Right.
I've been safe from Mariah Carey. So thank God for that.
Stay alert, man. Stay alert.
But Kevin, I know you're a busy guy, man, and of course I'm not going to take you away from the rest of your Sunday night too long, but I got to take you back to the beginning of your amazing music career, where I read that very early on you actually took lessons from a local hero out there in Massachusetts called Johnny Moore. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about what sparked your interest in the music industry, and of course, how did you actually end up getting taken under the wing from the legendary Johnny Moore?
That's correct. I was taught by Johnny Moore. He was my first and primary teacher of guitar. I just had wanted to play guitar when I was a kid, and I got a guitar for my first communion when I was 7, an acoustic guitar. And it took me about 6 months to figure out, why can't I make this sound like Angus Young's guitar or Jimmy Page's guitar, you know? And then I had to realize and learn that this is an acoustic guitar. It's not an electric guitar, you know? So I learned that was about my pace of learning at the time. And Johnny Moore was really patient. I was just a young kid. We went through a couple of like Mel Bay guitar books, Shoe Fly Don't Bother Me and stuff like that. And then he said, okay, you got a tape or something that you want to bring in, and you want to know how something goes, bring it in. I was like, oh wow, here we go. Excuse me. So that's how it all started. And I'd bring a tape in. I'd say, I want to learn this AC/DC song, or I want to learn this Jimi Hendrix song or something. And he'd listen to it for about, he'd listen to it once and then rewind it, listen to it again and figure it out. And when about 5 minutes, he turned to me and goes, okay, here's what I think he's doing, And he was really good at learning things really quickly. And what he probably didn't even understand was that was my lesson right there, of watching him absorb something really quickly and then spit it almost entirely accurately back at me and show me how to do it, And he was the best, man. He was the greatest. And having a teacher like him, it's like, he also was a local musician. He played gigs and stuff. And so, he was just the coolest guy. So having a teacher like him, it was hard not to say, okay, I want to do this,
And I know you said, like you mentioned AC/DC and whatnot, he taught you how to play some of those songs, but what was the very first song that Johnny actually taught you to actually play? Like, what was the very first song that you actually recollect playing?
Oh man, I can't say for certain what it would be, It might have been like Hell's Bells by AC/DC or something like that.
And I gotta say, that's super talented,
an AC/DC song. I'm not sure exactly which one, but I remember being pretty obsessed with Hell's Bells when I was 8 years old, which would have been 1983, 84, something like that.
And I got to say, you can't ever go wrong with AC/DC, especially Hell's Bells. But I do know one thing. I can't play guitar worth crap, but I can tell you, if I tried to play AC/DC, it would totally sound completely different. So that definitely takes some talent to actually play some AC/DC on the guitar.
Yeah, you just got to love the music, I guess,
But also, taking things from the 80s to the 90s, in the year 1992, you were actually in a band called Dive that actually released a 5-track self-titled demo that was actually recorded in a 2-day span in Uxbridge, Massachusetts. From what you can recall, can you tell us a bit more about this demo? And of course, was it actually ever released to the general public in the year 92?
Well, first I want to commend you on your ability to find details, man. That's nutty that you're able to present it like that. That's pretty factual. And B, anyway, I apologize to anyone who's we're not talking about Dropkick stuff. This is your life, man. So kudos to you, and I appreciate anybody else's patience out there while I try to answer the question in a proper way. But yeah, that's true. We recorded a demo, and that was actually, I think we recorded that in maybe like September, October in 1991 down in Uxbridge. And yeah, probably came out in 1992 or something like that. We did it with this guy named, I forget the owner of the studio's name. He was there and producing and engineering it. I mean, it was our first thing. So it was pretty bare bones. And there was another local guy there named Roger LaValle, who was a longtime Central Mass musician who knew his way around the studio and really helped us get it done. He was great.
And if I'm not mistaken as well, I think that actually got released with Marlin Records, from what I read as well.
Oh my God. That's kind of like a humorous thing that we just wrote on there. It was something that our friend Kevin Langford cooked up, I believe. So Langford, if you're listening to this, check that out, Marlin Records, dude. We just put that on there as a gag, we weren't trying to seriously pursue releasing more music or having that be a thing again. That's amazing you caught that, man. Good one.
But also as well, after Dive, yourself and a former member of Dive as well, Matt, actually formed another band called Get High. I was wondering what actually led to you and Matt transitioning from Dive into that other phenomenal band called Get High.
So the band Dive that we were in, we played a lot of local shows and excuse me, like Central Mass, Worcester, New England, Boston. Went down to Connecticut. We did a upper East Coast weekend with Josta 14, which was Jamie Josta's first band. In I think February of '94, we all went in the back of a Ryder truck and just two bands worth of dudes and our friends with our gear, just riding in the back of this open box truck down to Washington D.C. and Virginia Beach and Richmond, Virginia. But one of the bands we played with the most was another local band called Opposition, and it was the guitar player, bass player went on to be the guitar player, bass player, Get High, Derek Wood and Greg Letard. And they played, their drummer was Bill Johnson in Opposition. And we played with them all the time, and they broke up. We broke up, and then they stuck it out for another like year or two, and then those guys broke up, and we kind of all were still friends. And we had a bunch of songs, and Derek had some songs, and he said, we used to hang out together, and said, you want to give this a shot? And there it was. It was a couple of days of getting together, and then we kind of knew right after like the first or second time that we jammed, we're like, hey, we're gonna do this.
And I got to say as well, you guys put out some phenomenal music as well. And one of them is actually an album that actually originally got released in 2002, but it was actually recorded in 1997, which is actually the self-titled album, 9-track studio album. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about the story behind this album. And of course, how did the album actually end up on Big Wheel 5 years later?
Excuse me. So the 97, you're talking about the studio record that we did in 97, or the one that was released later, the demo that got put on vinyl, or the actual first studio record? I'm sorry.
The actual first studio record CD. My apologies.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So we, that's where the Dropkicks kind of changed. We were playing gigs, and Matt was our drummer, and then we played a show with the Dropkicks, and he was already like totally on board with their thing and had been going to their shows and stuff. And I mean, they were awesome. We played with them at the Rat, and they blew the doors off the place. And I was like, wow, this is something going on here, And shortly after that, they needed a drummer who wanted to tour, and Matt ended up joining the band. So we were out of drummer, and we found, luckily, we found another guy who's pretty well known now, a dude named Alex Garcia Rivera, who had played in Kingpin and Shelter and 454 Big Block and stuff. Piebald, and he'd been in tons of bands, and he'd been on the road a lot. He knew what he was doing. So he expressed an interest. He heard through Brian McTurnan, who also lived in Boston at the time, that we heard through Brian that he was interested in playing with us after he heard that Matt had left. So that came together pretty quickly again, and then we just went on and wrote another batch of songs and did a record when we recorded that in Norwood, Mass, I believe, with Dean Baltalonis was like the producer of that record. Yeah, and it was put out on Big Wheel Records initially, which was a record label run by a dude named Rama Mayo, who put out a lot of local Boston stuff at the time.
And I got to say as well,
21 Orama.
I got to say as well, man, Big Wheel, phenomenal record label. I looked at the list of bands that were signed to them back in the day, and man, the list is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a cool time for sure. We had a lot of fun.
And also as well, in the mid 2000s, you actually released a record that had two phenomenal songs on it, titled Disarray and Can't Hold On. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about the story behind this two-track record. And of course, is it actually still out there to be streamed or purchased today? Because I saw that it is on YouTube, and I do know that you can get the copy of the album on eBay, but people want like an astronomical amount of money for it.
Oh wow, that's a surprise to me. It's funny you mentioned that because of one of the other dudes in Dropkicks the other day. He said he was in a local record store in like, I don't know, Medford or something like that, somewhere in Boston or nearby. And he said they had a copy of the 45 there. It was like, $3 or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And I was psyched to hear that they had it. I was like, wow, somebody finally decided to clear out their attic or something like that, So yeah, I had not played in bands for a long time. I took a break from music to kind of focus on doing a bike messenger company, ironically with Greg Letarte, who was the bass player of Get High. We both were, we had toured a little bit and we had no money. We were flat broke and we were just kind of like making this thing happen out of nothing. But at some point we're also young kids and we're like, at some point we needed to get some more money to keep it going, so we kind of stopped touring for a little while and got jobs. And then, after a little while, we made another record that Greg actually put out himself that wasn't really released on a label. But there's not too many copies of that out there either. But, and then I wasn't in music for a while. Greg and we did the bike messenger thing. And he actually still runs that company in downtown Boston. It's called Flyer of the City. And I was like, I've always wanted to get back into playing music and playing in a band and stuff. And I kind of found myself in a position where I went from being in a scene with tons of people who are always ready to jam at all times, in my early 20s to like 5 or 6 years later being in my late 20s, almost 30. And like, who am I going to jam with? Everyone's either like in a band already and busy or moved or got a family going or something. So I'm like going on Craigslist and I'm like, I need to find somebody to play music with. And there's all these things like, if you're over 26, don't respond to this. I'm like, oh man, it's like soul crushing, I'm like, but I'm ready to go. So I was like, I'm just going to have to do something on my own to get started here. And that's kind of what that was. And it was also by our friend Alex Garcia Rivera, who was the drummer in Get High after Matt. That was the beginning of him starting what is now a home studio that he has called Mystic Valley Studio. And he's produced records out of there that have gone platinum, I believe, which is pretty wild to think about. And he had just getting his gear up and running. And he called me up one night and said, hey, I just set up my tape machine, recalibrated it. You want to come over and play guinea pig? So I didn't actually pay him for that. He invited me over to run the machine while I like cut the tracks. And so I was like, okay. And they came out pretty good. And so I had a little bit of money saved up and I said, I'm going to just put this out there and have it be like a legitimate thing, which was probably pretty foolish. I didn't have a lot of extra money at the time and I still don't, but I did it. I was bold at that moment, I guess.
And also as well, fast forward to September 2007, you actually got a call from Matt actually telling you that the Dropkick Murphys were looking for a guitar tech. Jesus, I can't even get that word out tonight. Guitar tech, and you actually ultimately led to actually doing it. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about that particular phone call and what led to you becoming an actual bass player for the Dropkick Murphys exactly 10 years later.
So the touring world is a small world of people that like do that for a living, kind of. And once you're out there, you start to meet people, and in part of my getting back into music, shortly after making that crazed single we were just talking about, I was playing in other bands in Boston, and I joined a band called Barnacle, and their drummer was a dude named Luke Garrow, who also played drums in the band Piebald. And we were playing local shows with Barnacle, and he and I were having a good time. We knew each other from years before, too, from the Big Bill days back in the mid-'90s. We hadn't played in a band together yet, so we were having fun. And then Piebald had a couple of big tours coming up, and he said, "Hey, we need a guy. Do you want to come out and come on the road with us?" And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah, that'd be great." So I went out with them and had some of the greatest adventures of my life. Uh, and Matt caught wind of it right about the time that they needed a guitar tech, a dude who had worked for them for a long time named Brendan McGuire, aka Stu, was stepping down, and they needed somebody at the time, so it all kind of lined up. And I said, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." And I was a little nervous at first, but I got along with everybody pretty quickly, pretty right off the bat with pretty much everybody. And we just went out there and had fun and brought the party all around the world. It was great. We had a lot of fun. And so, yeah. So how did I become the bass player? That's nutty, man. There was actually a small period of time where I was I didn't work for the band full time. It was like 2012, 2013, and some of 2014 even, where I was living in New York City. I moved from Boston, New York, and me and my wife were like, "We're going to New York." I was working in the film industry. I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but I still ended up doing a tour or two with them a year. They needed a tech, or they needed, like somebody to fill in for something or whatever. And then late 2014, I ended up going back full time because we were like, okay, we're going to leave New York, and because the way New York is just a crazy place with another rules of engagement, to live down there. And my wife and I were going to have a baby, so we're like, I think we're going to go back to Massachusetts. And similar kind of thing. It all just lined up again. Those guys needed somebody in a pinch, and they brought me out really quickly. And then I went on the next tour with them, and I just stuck around again, And then in 2018, Ken had this thing happen where he had like it was like some crazy thing going on with his neck that he had ended up having surgery for it, and it ended up kind of screwing up his arms a little bit, I think. You might read out there that he was in a motorcycle accident, but I don't think that's entirely true. It's not like he rides he'll ride like a motorcycle, sure, but I've never seen him ride. I've never heard of him getting in an accident. It's not like he rides a Harley to practice or anything like that. God bless him. But none of us do, because we don't want to keep doing what we're doing. But he had this thing happen where he needed surgery and he couldn't play, and his recovery took a little bit longer than he expected. And over that period of time, I guess we were just having fun, and they're like, let's just keep doing this. And I was excited that it was not just a temporary thing. It was great.
And speaking of your film career as well, because obviously this is about the Dropkick Murphys and whatnot, but I got to bring up just a little bit of your film career as well for the individuals that don't know. I do know that in 2014, you actually were part of the additional crew for the movie Julia in 2014. I was wondering if you could actually tell us a bit more about working on the set of that particular film.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know where you found out about that, man. That's nuts. That's the first time I worked on set in New York shortly after we moved there. I really was walking around New York with a resume, just going to restaurants and going to offices, and everybody was like, "Do you have any New York experience?" And I'm like, "No, because I don't live there for like a few weeks." And they're like, "Sorry." And then a friend of mine, he was like, "You want to get lunch?" And I said, "Sure." And his girlfriend went to the lunch too, and she ended up being like a production manager on that movie. And part of the topic at lunch, I was like, "Man, I've been striking out trying to get a job." And she's like, "Do you want to work tonight?" And I said, "Yes." So I went home after having lunch with them and took a shower or something, and it was like a couple of overnight weirdo fire watch shifts outside in like February in Chinatown in Brooklyn, not Manhattan, but the one in Brooklyn. Yeah, I don't like horror movies. They scare me. I'm a real wuss when it comes to that stuff, man. I can't watch. The way I talk about it is Nightmare on Elm Street kept me up for a month when I was 10 years old. And I only ever saw the commercial on TV. I never saw the movie. It was just seeing the ad, and I still was afraid to sleep. So I never saw the movie Julia. I don't even know what it's about, but yeah, I did work on that. And that was my first job doing that kind of stuff, thankfully.
And I will say, don't feel bad about the horror movie aspect, Ben. I watched Child's Play once when I was a kid. My ass wouldn't touch my GI Joes for like 3 months.
No way.
Not at all, man. Once I saw that, I was like, no. I think
No.
at some point I threw a few of them out the window, being like, "Yeah, let's see you climb up now, bub."
Right, right.
But also going back to the Dropkick Murphy side of things, I also read that while on tour in Bangor, Maine, legendary author and movie producer Stephen King actually walked into the dressing room. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us the story behind that night. And of course, speaking of horror movies, what led to the horror icon invading the Dropkick Murphy dressing room?
Yeah, well, that night was I think that was in July of 2017. It was in Bangor, Maine. You're right. It was the first night of a co-headline tour the Dropkicks did with Rancid, actually. And Rheault legend has it that Stephen King had an office or something like that in Bangor at the time, and he had come down and was like, I could hear you guys sound checking out from the window of my office. And I think he's pretty well known to like be like a hard rock guy, like AC/DC's like his favorite band. And they did the soundtrack to that Maximum Overdrive movie in the 80s for him and stuff. So he was amenable to the whole thing, and it would make sense that he'd want to come down and check out some rockers. And I just walked in the dressing room, and there he was. And I was like, wow. He was really cool. He hung out for just a couple of minutes and took a picture with us. And I don't know if he watched the show, but maybe he did. I don't know. He might have went back to his office and listened through the window. But it was really cool of him to come by, and it was a special moment to see him in person and to see. It was a genuine thing that he did. He went down and wanted to be like, yeah, I'm psyched. I love it. So.
Yeah, when it
Really
comes
cool.
to Stephen King, there's actually a few things I didn't even know about Stephen King, but recently I read that he actually owns, I think, 2 or 3 like radio stations out in Bangor, Maine, and the only reason why I actually saw the report is because he's selling them actually. So I guess he actually currently has his own stations, but soon to be former radio station owner.
Oh wow, interesting. I did not know that. That's
But
cool.
also aside from, pardon.
I said, what a tycoon.
I know. I mean, it's like literally a jack of all trades. When I read that,
Yeah.
I was like, man, what can Stephen King not do?
Yeah, right.
But also, aside from the Dropkick Murphys for a minute, you actually are part, and other legendary bands you also are a part of as well. But you and your wife have also written a lot of songs together where you both go under the name the Omega Mags. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the songs that you actually did with your significant other, and of course, for the people that want to hear a different side of yourself, how can they actually go about listening to these songs that you both created if they are indeed still uploaded on the internet?
I don't. That's a great question, man. Thanks for asking. I don't think that any Omega Mags material is currently up there to listen to. I could be wrong. We did have some stuff on our Bandcamp page for a while. But my wife is really talented. She has a great sense of melody, and she has a great sense of just like ideas for songs. I think of her as like the stories you hear about Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction. I think of her as like a female Perry Farrell. She doesn't really play an instrument, but she has a tune in her head at all times. Just a new thing that she's got going on. And when we first kind of got together, I was really intrigued by that. And I said, I think we can make something out of this. Like let's see what's going on there. And we probably wrote like 10 or 12 songs together right off the bat. And, I mean, it's like as much as any other people that make music, like life kind of, it's funny to say this, but life kind of gets in the way. You have kids, and I'm out there on the road, and she's raising our family at home, and then I'm coming home, and we're trying to scramble to get things done before I go back on the road again. And we were just talking, funny you mentioned it, we were just talking earlier tonight that we wanted to kind of try to take another stab at giving the songs good representation, because I think we wrote some really great songs together, and we actually still have some songs that we were currently working on just a few months ago that I have like GarageBand demos for. So we'll hopefully we'll that'll your question there will be a little push for us to get something done and get something available for 2025.
And I obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, I'm not huge on Christmas. I'm trying to hide away from the Mariah Carey songs. But the one song that I have not been hiding from this Christmas holiday season is actually a song that the Dropkick Murphys actually released November 27th, 2020 called Christmas Baby Please Come Home. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about this Christmas song, and of course, what was it like just being in the studio with the rest of the Dropkicks and recording this soon to be holiday classic?
Excuse me. That was that came together pretty quickly. Yeah, it was just something where you said it was 2020, and so we're like into a situation where we're like, things are not happening for a while in a real way, but we wanted to find something to keep it going, some way to say we're still here, I guess, and so I think that the band decided to cover that which is a classic tune on it itself, and we all kind of learned it and went down to the old studio there, Q Division, and kind of bashed it out, I guess, in like a day, and it was a lot of fun. It was great to see those guys. It was great to be back in that setting. It was kind of like a feeling of this, maybe we're not going to lose this forever, a little bit of a reassurance there, and it was a positive experience, and I'm proud with how it came out. I think it came out really well.
And also, as well, moving into 2024, the Dropkick Murphys' most recent single, Sirens, dropped September 19th of this year. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about this brand new, or relatively new, Dropkick Murphys single. And of course, where can we actually buy or stream ourselves a copy of it today? Because I got to say, this is an absolutely killer song.
Thanks a lot, man. But yeah, I think you can just stream it on, I'm sure on iTunes or Apple Music or whatever it's called now, and Spotify and stuff like that. I think it's up on YouTube. You can just go and look it up if you're interested in hearing it. It's all out there, and please do check it out. Yeah, and that's it's a part of like the next batch of songs that the band started putting together for the upcoming record, I guess you could say. So it's a kind of a similar thing. We weren't ready to go in and do a whole record yet, but we wanted to get something done. So over this past summer, we went in for a couple of days and recorded that song and messed around with some other ideas, and it ended up coming out pretty good. So I think it's like, hey, let's put this out, let's do this. And we had a fall tour, and we knew we could play it, promote it on that tour, so it all lined up really cool. And it's a fun song to play, and it's just like, I heard people say like it feels like an old Dropkick song. And I think that is true. It does feel kind of like the old songs in the set to play, because it requires a lot of energy and it moves along at a pretty good clip.
And I do know as well that Dropkick Murphys are always on stage. You guys are always keeping busy. With that being said, what are some of the most what are some of the next shows you guys have coming up? And if so, where can we actually snag ourselves some tickets if the Dropkick Murphys do have some additional shows actually coming up?
So you can get tickets at the band's website, dropkickmurphys.com. If they're available for the show, they're available right there on the website. That's the best way to get them. Don't go to Ticketmaster or any third party or anything. Just go right through the band's website. And the next shows we have coming up are in late January. We're starting a tour. So I think it's a 3.5-week tour in Europe. And
Nice.
yeah, so we're going over there, and I think the first show might be January 22nd or January 21st or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. Like it's only a few weeks away, but I'm trying to pretend it's next year, because it is.
Yeah, honestly, you don't want to rush the new year, man, because a new year means another year older.
That's right. And that's not to say that I'm not looking forward to the shows, because I'm really excited to get back out there and get over to Europe. It's great over there. I love it over there. I love it everywhere we go, but Europe is wonderful, man.
Oh, I know Europe when it comes to amazing punk rock bands like yourselves, man. Europe, you guys get the utmost treatment out there in Europe. It's always Europe and Japan. I wish down here in Canada we would give you guys the same treatment. I mean, I wish everybody would, because then we'd get more punk rock down in our area of Canada. But
sure,
it's always the Europeans winning everyone over, man.
Well, we've had a lot of fun in Canada recently. I'll tell you that, man. We hit a bunch of Canadian cities on our fall tour this past September and October. And all those shows were probably some of the best shows of the tour, And we did a couple of festivals in Canada before the tour in mid-September, and those were both dynamite shows as well. So you guys are no slouch, man.
I got to say, I'm down here in my side of Ontario. We don't get a lot of punk rock bands. I think we got like Authority Zero, actually, Authority Zero and Belvedere.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, Steve from Belvedere, he was saying on stage that it was like, I think the last time he played in Ottawa was like 2009, and I was like, Jesus.
Wow.
I was like, man, because like down here in Ottawa, we don't get a lot of great punk rock, man. But I always keep my ear to the streets, man. Because once I hear it, I'm there.
There you go. There you go. That's the way to be.
But Kevin, before we actually part ways here tonight, man, I have to ask: is there anything we happen to miss during this evening's interview? I do know you are gearing up for a tour next year in 2025, but is there anything else we happen to miss? Anything else you do still want to touch on, talk about, or promote? We still got you here live on the radio tonight.
Hey, I just first I want to commend you on how you're a good man and thorough. How thorough you were with the research you did into what the heck I've been up to, man. So I got to cover my tracks a little better, I guess.
I always tell people, man, if it's on the internet, I will find it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy, but I always like finding good questions. I do know a lot of other interviewers. They kind of just go and they kind of just like free flow it with like kind of like let's chop it up type vibe. But I was like going in with research because that way I want to make sure that your fans can learn at least something new from the interview. They can at least take something away from it. If you're giving me your time, I want to make sure that you're getting something out of it as well.
Well, I'll put it. This is I guess since you're giving me the opportunity, which I appreciate, there, man. I guess I'll say just come see us live. Come to a show. People know who Dropkicks are. The band, we've been at it for a long time, and we're still up there having a blast. So if you make it through the door, you are gonna have a blast with us, whether you like it or not. So if you want to have fun, come on down, come see us play, come party with us, man.
And Kevin, quickly before we actually part ways, obviously I know how to follow you yourself on social media, but for the individuals that want to stay updated on everything you currently got going on, how do we go about following you across all social media platforms?
You can find me on Instagram, just my name on Instagram. But I delete Instagram off my phone in between tours, so if it takes me a minute to respond, if it's when the time of the band's not on the road, then don't take it personally. Or if we are on the road, because sometimes if we're doing a lot of flying or traveling, whatever, I can be like, oh, I saw that message yesterday, and it was like that was 6 days ago. And you're like, what?
It's that jet lag, man.
You can find me there. I think you can find me on Facebook. I have like a kind of it's not quite a MySpace profile, but I don't go on my Facebook page very often. But so that's not a reliable way to contact me. But that is floating around out there, and just there I am out there. Come say hi.
And I got to say, first and foremost, again, Kevin, thank you so much for a bit of your time, man. It was such an honor speaking with such a legendary punk rock musician like yourself. Hopefully, down the line, we can make this happen again sometime soon. But for now, have yourself a phenomenal what's rest of the holiday season, and of course, safe travels there and back home after your European tour next year.
Thank you, my friend, and you, DJ Immortal, have a great holiday yourself, too, man. Thank you for the respect and kindness that you've showed me in this interview by taking me seriously, dude. I appreciate that. And to all your listeners, happy holidays, you guys. Have a good one.
You as well. Thank you so much, Kevin, and you're most certainly welcome. Have yourself a great night.
Okay, you too, my friend.